Hello, I'm Maryam. Moshiri. You're watching The Context on BBC News. At the third public hearing investigating the US Capitol riots, the committee focuses on how President Trump tried to pressure Vice President Mike Pence not to certify the election results. New footage shows Mike Pence being rushed to protection by Secret Service agents. The committee praised the former vice president for his actions, but there was a warning about what the future might hold.
We're fortunate for Mr. Pence's courage on January 6th. Our democracy came dangerously close to catastrophe.
Donald Trump and his allies and supporters are a clear and present danger to American democracy.
After a second resignation in as many years, Downing Street says Boris Johnson is looking at whether the role of an advisor on standards is needed after Lord Geidt stepped down last night. And the Bank of England hikes up interest rates to a 13-year high and warns that inflation could hit 11%. Tonight, with The Context, chief political commentator at the I newspaper, Paul Waugh, and former advisor to Hillary Clinton, Amanda Renteria. Hello and welcome to the programme. Well, we start in Washington, of course, where the third day of the January 6th committee hearings has wrapped up. It's been focused very much on Mike Pence and connecting Donald Trump's intense pressure campaign on his vice president not to certify the election results with the violent intentions of the mob that stormed the Capitol. Well, strong words there from Mr. Lutig. Let's cross live to our correspondent, Nomia Iqbal, who is on Capitol Hill for us. Nomia, bring us up to date with what we heard today. Nomia, thank you very much indeed. Nomia Iqbal there for us on Capitol Hill. Well, let's now talk to Miles Taylor, who worked as Homeland Security Chief of Staff during the Trump presidency and co-founder of the Renew America movement that aims to combat extremism in American politics. Miles, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us here on The Context, and welcome back to my two panellists, Paul and Amanda, too. Miles, first of all, to you, what do you make of today? OK, thank you, Amanda, and thank you very much to you, Miles Taylor, for taking the time to join us on The Context.
Thank you.
Now, UK politics, the fallout from the resignation of Boris Johnson's ethics advisor. This is how one Tory MP described it in the House of Commons. Well, let's bring our guests back into this. And Paul, what do you make of that? Not resigning over Partygate, but resigning over this, a trade deal over steel. Amanda, thank you. Well, the Bank of England has pushed up interest rates again in an attempt to stem the pace of soaring prices. Rates have increased from 1 to 1.25%. It's the fifth consecutive rise, pushing them to the highest level in 13 years. The Bank of England is also predicting that inflation in the UK will go above 11%. Well, inflation is being pushed by a number of factors: Ukraine war, the lockdown in China, and the impact of Brexit. And food is among the areas worst hit. James Walton is from the Institute of Grocery Distribution, and he explains. OK, well, Amanda and Paul, thank you. Stay with us because we've got plenty more to come on the programme. In fact, still to come, we'll be finding out how the pioneering way Houston has cut homelessness has taken effect. It's taken 25,000 people off the streets of Houston and given them homes and apartments to live in. More on that and lots of other things as well coming up in a few minutes' time. Stay with us on BBC News. Hello, I'm Maryam. Moshiri. You're watching The Context on BBC News. A show of support from EU leaders on a visit to Kiev, backing Ukraine's bid to join the European Union, calling for the country to be given immediate candidate status. The leaders of Germany, France, Italy and Romania meet the country's president. Mr. Zelensky said the attack on Ukraine was an attack on all of Europe and only united action could stop it. Well, Sergei Lavrov, Russia's foreign minister, who's been at President Putin's side for almost 2 decades, criticises the UK for its policy towards Russia and says it would be an understatement to say relations between the two countries are bad.
По-моему, там уже нет никакого поля для маневра в этих отношениях.
А как вы...
Потому что и Джонсон, и Трасс заявляют публично, мы должны победить Россию, мы должны поставить Россию на колени. Ну давайте, ставьте.
And coming up, Houston, we have a solution. How the Texan city tackled homelessness, taking 25,000 people off the streets and into homes. Tonight with The Context, chief political commentator at the I newspaper Paul Waugh and former advisor to Hillary Clinton, Amanda Renteria. Welcome back to the programme. Well, let's look at what's happening in Ukraine now, because the leaders of the 3 most powerful countries in the European Union, Italy, Germany and France, visited Kiev today. The French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and the Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi travelled by overnight train. The trio visited Irpin, just outside of Kiev, where they saw evidence of the destruction caused by indiscriminate Russian shelling. And they also met with President Zelensky. All the leaders committing to increasing their support for Ukraine with more money, more humanitarian aid, and most importantly for Ukraine, more weapons. Emmanuel Macron had this to say. Well, let's talk now to Professor Sergei Radchenko, who joins me. He's a Russian security expert at Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies. Thank you so much for joining us on The Context. Let me ask you first of all about the 3 European leaders being in Kiev, in Ukraine. I mean, a show of strength like this by these leaders is hugely important, both symbolically and also practically as well. Well, Sergei, stay with us, because an exclusive for the BBC, the Russian foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, he, of course, is one of Vladimir Putin's closest allies. He, in fact, has known him has been with him for the last 18 years. And now, as the bloody war in Ukraine continues, he's sat down with our Russia editor, Steve Rosenberg, for an interview. Let's have a listen. Well, Paul, interesting there that Sergei Lavrov naming Boris Johnson and Liz Truss, the Foreign Secretary, and talking about the relationship with the UK not having much room to manoeuvre now at all. Amanda, thank you. And a special thank you to Professor Sergei Radchenko for joining us on The Context.
Thank you.
Now, at any given time, roughly 500,000 people in the US live in homeless shelters or on the street. And after the pandemic, it's only rising. In cities like New York and San Francisco, local governments have tried implementing legislation and have pledged billions of dollars to tackle the growing problem. But in America's 4th largest city, they aren't just investing money in the issues, they're actually providing homes to those facing homelessness. In the past decade, Houston, Texas has worked together with other agencies to move over 25,000 people from the streets to homes of their own, making it the best city in the country at reducing homelessness. Well, impressive stuff. Let's bring you someone who helped with this initiative, Tao Costis, who's CEO of Search Homeless Services. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us on The Context. How was it done? I mean, it's amazing how much progress Houston has made in the last 10, 11 years.
And that's what's important in here.
That's lovely. Thank you for that story, Tao. And I want to bring in our panel now because, Amanda, I know you live near San Francisco, and I've been reading in the papers recently about the rise in homelessness in the city. Do you think that cities like San Francisco have a lot to learn from Houston? Well, clearly they do. But why do you think this kind of, this is not being taken nationwide, this kind of method? OK, well, thank you very much, Paul. And thank you once again to Tao Costa. It's been really good to have you on the programme. Thank you. Now it's time for the panel. Why does that make me feel like a failed game show host? I don't know. Time for the panel. So, Paul, you're a tree lover, I hear. Tell me more. That's a very negative way to end the programme, but I'm afraid we're out of time.
Place in Arkansas.
Thank you very much, Paul and Amanda. It's been a real pleasure to have you both on the programme. And thank you at home for watching The Context. Bye-bye from me.
Hello there. Heat is currently building both sides of the Atlantic. Things really hotting up in Europe.